there's always that feeling that no matter what I do, it's not good enough. This is The Biz Reveal, and I am your host, Craig Sawyer. This week's episode is sponsored by Secret Addiction by S.J. Sawyer. Inspired by a true story, a woman's journey for the truth of addiction after her husband is exposed with child pornography files on his home computer. She fights her way through divorce and focuses on protecting her 2 young sons. She also learns how to date, unearths her self-esteem, and discovers what true love really is. You can find Secret Addiction on Amazon in paperback and Kindle editions, or go directly to the website at pineapplebeachcreations.com. Today on episode 10 with Shirene Gentry, we dive into personal issues of my own and try to determine why I, like many others, find it so easy to find the negative in situations and not consider the positives. This is the back half of my conversation with Shirene from last week, after the end of the podcast session, where we continued our discussion together on a personal level. I am calling this episode 10 and not part 2 of the first episode, because our discussion on this episode is not about the effects of stress in your mental health, but rather a personal discussion about finding a positive state of mind. In this episode, I put my heart on the line, and Shirene provides excellent feedback based on her expertise as a life coach to help me find the root of my shortcomings and how I can resolve them to become a happier, more fulfilled person with healthier relationships. This is a personal one. I hope someone out there finds some peace in hearing part of my story and how Shirene walks me through self-therapy. This is The Biz Reveal with my guest, Shirene Gentry. We'll just call this episode The Personal One. I'm a very pessimistic person. My wife will vouch for that all day long. I always find the negative in everything, and I didn't used to be that way. I wasn't that way until about 20 years ago when I was going through the divorce and the custody battle with my ex-wife, my son's mom. I was a single dad for 12 years after that.
Sure.
So
wow.
I did end up with him, but it made me bitter. And ever since then, I've always been somebody who has seen the negatives so much easier than positives. I see the positives. I just don't really acknowledge them. Yeah, that's great, but look at all this crap. You know, it's kind of one of those sorts of things. So I like the idea of writing down the positive things, because everybody's like, well, just be more positive. Seek out the positive. Well, that's easy to say, but it doesn't really change anything. But I think if I write them down, it makes it a little bit more real.
Yes, but I'm also going to tell you something, and because I don't know where you are with this, and you don't even have to answer, because I had to go through this in my own life. Somewhere along the line, you are going to have to forgive.
Yeah, I think I have. I think I've let it go, because he's older now, so I don't have to deal with her. So I think I let it go, but it did. It changed me. It fundamentally changed me.
Well, in my own life, and all this is in my book.
I might have to do some more reading soon.
Yeah, well, my mom on her deathbed, and all the water under the bridge. And so I actually had to forgive her after she was gone.
Oh, that's even harder.
My point is, once I did that, the bitterness went away. But the great news is, I was always a glass half empty person myself.
Yeah.
Until I started paying attention to my thought life. And again, well into like my early 40s, I never paid attention to my thought life. And then it wasn't working for me.
I think my biggest thing is not necessarily forgiving other people.
Okay.
I think, now we're digging. It's more internal, and maybe not having forgiven myself for the things that I've done.
Okay.
I think it's probably where it comes from.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and you know what? You can.
I know.
But
and I see some of these things. It's just maybe it's easier to not deal with it.
So you know what? So just a little word, and you don't need to go into detail, but if it still bothers you, whoever you feel like you need to go to and say, hey, I screwed up, you know what? You'll be done. You will, that burden will be off your shoulders.
There's some things that if you do that, it can affect your current life in a negative way.
Oh, okay. Well, then you have
That's the battle. It's like, okay. Yeah, you want to come clean about something. I mean, it's nothing like major. It's nothing like that. It's small things. It's arguments. It's, maybe I said something to somebody that I shouldn't have said. I meant it in the moment, but then you know how it is. I mean, you say things in a moment and,
sure.
Or did things, especially raising kids. My God, the things I did that I wish I could take back. And I think that's why grandparents spoil their grandkids, because they were realizing all the bad stuff that they did wrong with their own.
Right,
Like they're trying to make up for it with the grandkids, right?
Right.
So it's things like that, but it's sometimes things that I don't feel like I could vocalize to get through because of how it may affect the present and future. So
sure.
That's the internal battle I have with a few things. And trust me, I know you're not a psychiatrist or psychologist, but there's probably some some really dark things that I really probably should be working out as a person to be able to get some of that negativity.
Well, you know what? So one thing that has made me closer with our youngest son was having a brutally honest conversation with him last summer. And he, I mean, it made us closer.
Yeah.
And it was acknowledging, hey, kind of like what I said before, if I could rewind that clock, would I do things differently? Sure, I would.
Right.
And you know what? That endeared him to me and me to him, is just to say, hey, I'm not perfect. And yeah, I messed up. And it's amazing what grace is there when people hear someone else say, I'm sorry. It actually strengthens the relationship.
Yeah.
So you've got to decide. You don't want to do anything, sure, to damage what's good and what's happening now. Right. I get that. So
it's like I want to leave the past in the past. And my wife knows about my former life, when I was dating and, all those stories that you generally don't want to talk about with your, but
sure.
We've been married 8 years, been together like 11 years now, something like that. So, and she knows about all the bad stuff with that, or at least, the stuff that's worth talking about. So it's not anything like that.
Right.
It's just, I just, I'd like to leave the past in the past. And as far as everybody else is concerned, I have, but in my own head, man, I wish I was one of those people who say I didn't live with regret, but I do. I live with a lot of regret. And I think that might affect my moods and, how I look at myself. And maybe that's why I'm like a perfectionist. Like I feel like I'm never achieving what I'm capable of. There always has to be something else. I got to be better.
You know what? So you're looking at whatever happened in the past with yourself, just like you're looking at yourself with this podcast. You're not content.
No, it never will be.
Okay. So that's good, only to a certain degree.
Yeah.
Right. So when, I'm not about self-condemnation, because that never puts anybody in a good place. My theory is, hey, apologize and own what you need to with the people that are important, that are close to you in your life. Forgive the people who've wronged you, because actually you let yourself off the hook by doing that. Realizing that we all fail and we're all just learning and growing, whether it's how we've dealt with something in our past that's been bad. Okay, you know what? Chalk it up. Hey, I didn't cope with this well. I acted out. This is what it looked like. Well, you know what? I'm not going to do that again. I'm a different person. And, you can also look at that and say, hey, it made me bitter, but what is some good that came out of that? What's the flip side of the very same coin?
I think with that, if I was going to take a positive from the negatives,
yes.
which I think is the balance, the yin and yang, is that it made me more understanding of other people. I'm a small guy. I'm 5'3". So I've always been the littlest guy that people hang out with. Right. So I went through a lot of teasing and all that kinds of stuff when I was younger. And I think that also when we talked during the podcast session itself, which I'm still recording this. So heck, this might end up turning into two things if you're okay with it, but it's more on the personal side for me. But that's where a lot of mine comes from. I've always had to defend myself. And that's one of the reasons I went to the Marine Corps, was because at the time it was Air Force Marines, the easiest or the hardest. And to me, being 5'3" and had going through all the teasing and the bullying when I was growing up, it meant the most to me to have achieved the hardest branch, or what is, perceived as being the hardest branch to go through. That was a personal achievement for me. And that's why I did it. And it did build a lot of confidence. Hey, if I can do that, there's nothing I can't do. Like, everything is achievable once you've gone through that, especially being a little guy.
Right.
But there's always that feeling that I'm not, no matter what I do, it's not good enough.
Okay. See, your self-talk needs to be revamped.
You think? and I know that. I think the hard part, and this is what I was trying to lead to in some of the questions I asked you during the podcast, was I know that I need to change the way I think. How do you do that? It's a personality trait, and it's so hard to change a personality trait because it's ingrained in who you are. It is your being. And how do you whittle away at that and start moving it from one side to the other? And that's what I said about the journal thing and writing the positive things. Maybe that's the first step. But I like that it drives me. I don't want that to go away. And that's part of what I'm afraid of, is that if I do get rid of that, that I'm never going to be good enough, that I don't want it to pull away from my drive. And because that's what pushes me to keep doing more things and keep doing better things and just keep pushing towards those achievements. I don't want that to go away.
Here's the difference.
I want the motivator to be different, I guess.
Well, you don't need to prove anything, Craig. None of us need to prove anything. All we need to focus on is settling into our strengths, owning what our weaknesses are and knowing that those are growth areas in our life. But, part of it is my age. I'm 57, right? But I don't feel like I have anything to prove. I know what my deficiencies are, so I know I need to grow in those areas. I've taken lots of personality tests. But I don't feel like at this point in life I've got anything to prove.
I don't feel like I have anything to prove to other people. I feel like I'm trying to prove it to myself.
Right.
Like, I'm kind of one of those people. I'm like, screw everybody else. I really don't care what they think. I do, I don't ever believe somebody's like, I don't care what other people think. Everybody does to a certain point.
Sure.
It's just human nature.
Sure.
As long as you don't get too far to one side. I feel like I have, and I don't know where this comes from. I feel like I have to keep proving something to myself. Like I'm competing against myself constantly.
Yes.
How do you?
So, you know what? So I don't know. See if this works. This is what I do well. This is because see, I and you're doing great things, but I feel like you're just not content.
I never have been. I don't.
Yeah, but content doesn't mean that you. Well, but it doesn't mean that. But it doesn't mean that you stagnate. I feel like you interpret that. Well, if I'm content, that I'm not.
Then I just level off, and
well, all right, and that's not true. Only you know internally whether your drive puts you in a healthy place or a place that is not.
So there is a balance that I'm not able to see between I'm so happy with life right now. I love where I'm at, which I do. I appreciate it. I've made some really major goals in the last, year and a half that I never thought I would ever achieve, like, financially, career wise and things like that. I've always wanted to make a living talking. I'm not making a living doing it, but at least I've started, right? Because it sure as hell isn't paying me anything yet. But, so there's a lot of things that I have been able to do, especially as of late. And a lot of accomplishments I'm very proud of. They're just small personal accomplishments. It probably doesn't mean anything to anybody else, but I don't care. These are my things. But you're right. I don't feel like like being content. I'm never happy with where I'm at. Like, oh, I don't want to say that. I'm happy, but I want more. I want more. You know, I want to, okay, I've made it here. Now let's go to here. And once I get there, I've made it there. Now, you know what I mean? Like I want to keep building. It doesn't mean I'm not happy, but then I start feeling like I'm reacting to my current situation. Just like my business is down 50% this year, right? Like a lot of people going through the COVID thing. So I had a huge lifetime achievement last year when it comes to my income. And then this year, right, it just went to crap. So I view it as negative. But I tried to remember that even though I'm half as much as where I was at last year, it's still going to be higher than I'd ever made prior to last year. So it's still a huge accomplishment. All right.
See, so that right there tells me that you are focusing on the glass half full.
At least I'm trying to.
Okay. Well, you know what? So to answer your question though, is you can change the way you think and the way you interpret these negative life events. And you've done it just right there. No, it's not been a pleasant time, but hey, what have I been able to do during this time? You know, and even the way you're interpreting it, you know, being not as good as last year, but how you just portrayed it to me.
But
you're interpreting,
yes,
you're interpreting it in a way that puts you in a good, healthy, emotional place.
I just need to keep that a conscious thought more often.
Yes, you do.
It's kind of there. I don't really think about it. And then there'll be the occasion like right now where we're talking about it and I'm like, so it's almost like a realization at a specific moment in time, as opposed to a mindset. I want to make it a mindset. Like, hey, you know what? Things aren't as good this year, but hey, I'm not doing bad. And I'm doing a lot better than some people. So life is good.
So you know what? Your thought life is just like any other habit. You start making those daily tweaks of looking at the glass half full as opposed to sucked dry, right? And before you know it, it will become a mindset.
Just got to keep practicing it.
You've got to, and what we know is, you know, neuroplasticity, the brain does have the ability to change and create new neural connections. And the most powerful way to do that is to pay attention to what we're telling ourselves and about our circumstances.
Yeah.
And it can be done. But, you know, like I said, I never used to be a glass half full person. And so when you're trying to retrain your brain to perceive life in a new, healthier way, it takes work.
It does.
It takes work. But you know what? The more you do it, the easier it gets. Did you ever see that movie? Oh, it had all the little animated characters. I forgot.
It'll come to you as soon as we hang up.
Exactly. Anyway, it's a little animated show that came out a few years ago. But the producers were brilliant because they had this little blue-faced character, which represented depression. And in the back, it was like a kid's movie, and now I can't think of it. In the back was a runaway train. Well, all that was by design. That is our thought life. Our thoughts are a runaway train unless we put the brakes on and pay attention to what it is we're thinking about. And so when you put the brakes on and then start focusing on, well, what am I thinking about that's either good for me or bad for me? Because thoughts are never neutral. They either work for you or they work against you. But that movie was brilliant because the producers had even the symbolism in the background for our thought life, but you can change it. And so it's the daily little tweaks, just like going to the gym twice a week, you know, whatever daily little tweaks you make, they add up. It becomes a mindset, which then becomes habitual.
Like everything else, flexing that muscle, you know, creating that habit.
It can be done.
Yeah.
It takes work, but it can be done.
I'm starting to go through that, I guess, self-awareness stage. I don't know if it's an age thing. I'm 45. I don't know if it's an age thing. We're like 2.5 weeks away from being empty nesters for the first time, which Sorry, I am so looking forward to. But because I've spent more than half of my life raising kids, and I want to be selfish. I want to do what I want to do when I want to do it. I want to, say what I want to say whenever I want to say it. Not that I usually hold back much anyway, but I'm really looking forward to that. But now I'm starting to feel unhappy in the sense that I'm not happy with myself and who I am, not what I'm doing professionally and things like that. Cause that's been my driver for so long is, my profession, as it is with most men, I think.
Sure.
Because your profession and your income, that's who you are. That's the first person that people ask. So what do you do for a living? It's always that question, right? So now that I'm there, who am I? If I didn't have this profession, who would I be? If it was taken away from me, who would I be?
That's what my book talks about.
Awesome. And so again, I'm starting to read, trying to get my mind in other places, try to bring my creativity back. I'm a musician. I play drums, and I used to be in a band long ago, and then kids and marriages came and, life gets in the way and stuff like that. So I started playing again recently and started doing the podcast. So I'm trying to get more of that creativity side back, which will help me get out of that logical side that I'm in constantly, which that's stress. That logic of just thinking. So I'm trying to start digging in to the self-awareness and self-improvement thing. And, I'm going to try to start exercising. I have started, I get in little periods of time where I watch what I eat, and it makes you feel better about yourself. And when you start feeling better about yourself, whether it's your physical image or your mental state, you start feeling better about yourself. Your outlook changes on life itself. So that's where I'm at right now. And that's why I've been asking you so many questions, because I want to be a better person, not just a better professional. I want to be a better person. And I want my son to look at me in an ideal way. Again, like I said before, in that deathbed situation.
That would be a great conversation to have before he heads to camp.
Well, it's not that son that I'm speaking of, but because that's my stepson. But hell, I've raised him more than half of his life. But no, it's my son, my biological son, because good kid. He's a great kid, but he's just a horrible decision maker. He's made a lot of bad decisions, but I want him to understand it, because the times that he drives me the most crazy, I've realized, is the times that he's acting most like me. Mm-hmm. And that is a scary thing to see. It's a scary thing to see. And it makes me feel horrible that I created the majority of the problems of in his life, and not intentionally. It's all indirect, but a lot of the things that he says, a lot of the things that he does, some of the things that he thinks, came from probably a lot of the negative aspects of myself. And I want to fix that before it's too late.
Oh, well, you know what? So have that conversation with him.
Yeah. It'd be a good one to sit down and have a beer. And
exactly. How old is he?
20. He's getting ready to turn 23 here in another month. Oh,
yeah. You can have that conversation with him.
You're like, wait, he's not 16, right? Okay, you can have that beer.
No, but he's old enough to have that conversation.
Yeah, and I'd like to do that.
And I think it'll really bring the two of you closer. And keep in mind, sometimes kids have their own takeaways, which we didn't intentionally feed into.
Right. Sure. So they're their own people too.
Some of their perceptions may be on target, but they might not be.
Right.
So it's always helpful, I think, to have that conversation and say, hey, you know what? The past is the past. What do we need today moving forward?
Yeah. And I think getting through, because sometimes I have a hard time expressing my feelings into words.
Sure.
But I want to make sure that I can express them to him without coming off as being judgmental.
Sure.
You know what I mean? I don't want to judge him just because I don't agree with some of the choices he's made. I don't think of him differently as a person. I want better for him than the choices that he's made. And I've always been the one to save him. I've always been the one to dig him out of a hole. But there's a certain point where that becomes enabling.
Yeah.
And when they know they have a safety net, maybe they don't care so much about making those bad choices. So it's hard to pull back. And this is an argument my wife and I have on a regular basis. So it's created a little bit of friction in our marriage a couple of times as well. But
well,
I'd like to have that conversation with them.
Yeah. So that's tough.
How many children do you have?
I'm sorry.
Do you have children?
We've got 2 boys.
Okay. Yeah. So, I think we all go through something similar.
Yeah. So ages 25 and 28.
Okay.
But, I told them both when our youngest went off to college, I'm like, okay, you two are 18 and 21. You own your choices. Yeah. You own it at this point.
Yeah. You just, you have to be accountable.
Yeah.
Hey, and I told my son at a young age, life is always about choices. Now, your choices may not be choices you like. You may not like A or B, but you still have a choice. You got to pick one. Mm-hmm. And sometimes he picks B when he should be picking A. It's pretty much the majority of the time, which that's how you learn. It just sometimes
that's how you
learn.
When
that same situation comes up, he picks B again. I'm like, you got to learn from it, and I always told him at a young age as well that there are plenty of mistakes to make in life. Plenty. You'll never run out of mistakes. Make your own. Don't make mine. Learn from me, learn from people around you, and just don't make their mistakes. Learn from theirs so you don't make them, and then go out and make your own mistakes. Yeah. That's okay. Anyway.
Well, Craig, this has been great.
I love talking to you. You're fun. If you would, I would love for people to contact you if they have questions. I know you have a couple books out. If you wouldn't mind, just tell them real quick about the books, where they can find them, and then, of course, how to contact you as well after the show.
So my most recent book is Identity Unveiled, Daughter of the King of Kings, which is a little bit of a memoir, life coaching book, counseling book, divided into 3 sections for people to consider their own life stories and how they may need to change the story. The other books have been out for a little while: Change Unveiled, Inspiration Unveiled, and Recipes Unveiled, all available on Amazon.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Also, do you have a website that folks can go to, or even an email address where they can contact you?
Sure. So I have a brand new website, which is my name, ShireneGentry.com, which is podcast driven. So I'd love to get some listeners to subscribe if they're looking for concepts about who they are and their identity. And yes, if you'd like to email me, my business email is hopeunveiled@gmail.com.
Thank you so much, Shirene. I appreciate you spending the time with me today. I have a feeling we might have a few more conversations ahead.
I would love that.
I would love to record them as well, because I actually got a lot personally from this conversation, and I'd like to talk to you more. And I think that a lot of other people might get a lot more from future episodes as well.
Oh, so, hey, let's do it. I'm all about, just like you said, one person. If you can help one person, then it's worth it.
Absolutely. Everybody else, thank you so much. This has been the Biz Reveal with Shirene Gentry today. You can find us at thebizreveal.com at our website. If you listen to podcasts as opposed to watching them, you can find us on all the podcast apps. Just choose your favorite one and we'll be there. Otherwise, you can see the video versions of all of our podcasts on YouTube, and just look up the Biz Reveal there. Thank you, everybody. Till next time.